Okay, so I guess first we'll welcome everyone to the SIG webinar. Martin, I'm going to let you take control here.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we'll start. We're just a couple of minutes late, but I think people will still be drifting in once they get the email with the link. So first of all, welcome everyone to this webinar. It's the second event we've hosted since last year's EuroCALL, and the next one we host will be at EuroCALL 2022 in Iceland. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But we'll move straight ahead with the presentations today. I'm sure our presenters are busy people, and we will let them start speaking as soon as possible. So here's our agenda for today. First of all, we have Dr. David Bish from Education First. Then we have Daniel Shen from Soqqle, and finally Dr. Esther Torres from StratApp. So let's get straight on with it. I think we can stop sharing our screen and we can invite David Bish from Education First to speak to us about his work. You're muted, David, at the moment.
Thank you. You answered exactly my question. Good ESP there. So I've also just shared up a screen, if that's all right. Can people see that now?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Thanks for giving me rights to do that. So hello, everyone. I am Dr. David Bish from EF Education First. We're a large kind of global language teaching and education company in general. And I sit with EF Education First in my various roles, really at the bridge or the tipping point between technology and traditional teaching, face-to-face teaching, our teachers online, and so on. A lot of my work has been associated around that. So I thought I'd share with you today a few apps that we've done, and I've kind of stolen the maybe the agile mantra of failing fast and getting something out quickly to where I'm at, which is kind of failing fairly slowly. So I think we've done a lot of different things, and I think possibly useful, I hope useful for this audience, is some of the things we've learned are pain points of getting mobile apps out there and trying to integrate mobile with learning in different ways. So I've probably been involved with at least 10 to 15 apps over the years since about 2010, when I first got involved with EuroCALL myself, and I'm just going to share 4 of these with you that I think are worthwhile mentioning in this sort of group, and then round up with ideally some questions. So trying not to be too much of a sales pitch about these apps. They're not necessarily all available, but really about some of the developmental challenges. And I'm not really a developer, I wouldn't say. I'm more of a language teacher and teacher trainer myself. So I'm not going to be talking about, I know, our tech stack and things like that. I'm going to be trying to talk more generally. So there are 4 apps I wanted to cover today, something called Inspiring Teachers, EF Class, EF Words, and EF Fast Track. And these are all ones that are very much fit under the MAL head. First one here, Inspiring Teachers. We were dealing with something I'll talk about for iPads, but at the time, I personally had come up with a nice little idea, I thought, where I did a lot of training with teachers, and we tried to encourage teachers to work with us around the world. We were doing a lot of free teacher training, webinars, things like that. And I came up with a little app for teachers, pack of cards for teachers. Don't have one in my hand now, but a pack of cards that helped them plan. And kind of you chose what kind of lesson you were doing, and you sort of shuffled this pack of cards and pull out a pack of cards, and it would give you a lesson framework or a few questions to lead you in your planning if you were really stuck. Right? So it was just a kind of memory jogger thing. And I realized that this having a pack of cards that you shuffled was rather about the same size and format as using an iPhone. And your iPhones had this cool thing where you could shuffle them and things happen. So I thought, I know, I'll make the app on an iPhone, relatively simple, and it can give someone a card, and we can put that out on our websites, and people can have this nice free app. And so we did make this simple free app. Back at the time, we were very much dedicated at EAF to working with iOS and with Apple products. So it was an Apple app. I think this is I don't know, it's an iPhone S5 or something like this back there. And this really was the classic kind of very simple app that you get in a lot of app generators and so on these days, where really it showed you a selection of screens. And like I say, these screens were really just shuffled from a random number. They were a bit like web page screens, but it was a fully delivered app through the App Store. And really, as you can see there, it's very small on the screen. It just says shake for a new idea. You shook it and it showed you an idea. Or you could say, I just want reading ones, I just want writing ones. And so the user interface was very nice, very cute, super simple to use. You just had one button for narrowing the selection, and then you shook and something happened. A nice picture on it. And you could also click the button there that said our website name, and it would take you to our website. But it was essentially very standalone. There was no login, there was no database, no data handling. It was super cheap and fast to make. I made that on a budget in, I think we launched it in 2013, actually. I said 2013 for under 2,000 euros. So it was very cheap to make, and I looked around at companies who were making apps and software for other people, and there was a company back then called Ikanska. I don't think they're going anymore. An Indian company who really would help you build an app. So you just described it to them, and they made it. It was very straightforward to do. Lots of rounds of backwards and forwards and photos. And they made me this app and kind of designed it, tweaked it for a couple of different versions of iPhones. They put it in the App Store. And unfortunately, what happened with this cheap, fast turnaround, rapid deployment type thing is Apple changed their iOS. They upgraded the iOS. And I couldn't afford, at the time, out of my budget, it was all spent on this one-hit thing. I couldn't afford to pay Ikanska to update it to keep moving with it. So the thing actually went live for about 3 months before the custom coding in it stopped working, and it disappeared off the face of the earth. Right? So you can't find this thing anymore. Cute little idea, nice simple app, cheap to make, but the thing there is to sort of think about the longevity of the app, think about your relationship with the vendor and so on, because it's so then next. A potential failure, we went on to the thing I was really working on at the time, which is an iPad app, which built an ad hoc network of iPads in a traditional classroom. So the teacher had their central iPad, and when the teacher launched the app, it kind of any student in the classroom who also fired up this app would be connected to the teacher. If you had several classes going on, it would say, oh, are you in David's class or Steve's class? If Steve was teaching in the next room, for example, and the student would hit David's class, they would appear as a little register of students on the bottom. And it was not unlike using something like this now, except we were connected by being face-to-face in the classroom. And the purpose of this app was the teacher could distribute fairly rich sort of learning objects. So you might see there's a set of instructions, and there's a red icon there which is you could send out a video to people, or that you could send them out some reading, or even give them interactive activities that we put. So you could fuel different kinds of interaction with a group of students on an iPad screen, and rather than just giving them a link or a URL or getting them to scan a QR code or giving them complicated instructions, you sent it out to the group in conjunction with their course book and so on. So this was a quite sophisticated app. This was a very new idea. It did a lot of networking under the hood, and we actually had to build a team of in-house developers to make this. And the company I worked for at EF was very committed to really innovating with this learning. So we invested heavy in a team, agile developers. So I don't know, excuse me, I sometimes find agile a bit of a dirty word in development. You know, this is kind of like we look at the problem and we solve it for now, and then we look at what someone else wants, and we make a next solution, and it kind of goes on forever, rather than you saying, well, we're going to finish at such and such a day, which I did in the previous app, but that failed miserably. So maybe somewhere between the two is where you need to be. Because what we did with this technology is we actually had to redesign the way it networked 3 times as iOS and the network capabilities increased. We stayed with Apple, and we also did something at the time they called enterprise distribution, which I cannot explain for people less familiar with this. This is where you don't use an app store. You actually, these are all in-company iPads. They're signed up to a sort of agreement, a license with Apple, so you don't put it out through the App Store, but the app can be deployed by mobile device management out to those apps and out to those iPads, and all those iPads are kind of controlled by the central company database. So we had to own all of the hardware to make this software work. And Apple, certainly back in the day, I've dealt with them less recently, made it very hard to do educational type deployments. You know, they made it very hard to buy the hardware. We didn't get any reasonable discounts, and they made it very hard to deploy the software because they were thinking business rather than education. So we had these apps connected internally. We had to keep rebuilding it to keep pace with the networking built around iOS, and this made for a very long-term and costly relationship. We've actually evolved this to something now which works on different platforms, and it's something that we offer free, and we've scaled it down to work more through phones and tablets actually. But this was, again, this was a big, expensive product for us. It did give some great mobile learning opportunities in the classroom, I must say, and the kind of learning side of things, it allowed great opportunities, and it put learning in students' hands. It made for active engagement with material, got conversations going between students rather than just learn from the app as kind of the tutor. So the innovation was great. We were a shortlist in the British Council Eltons, so we're finalists with this, so it was recognised for what it did. And we were very happy with it, but technologically it was hard work and it was a big spend. And it's two more to mention. I hope I'm doing not too badly on time here. We came out with something smaller called EF Mentor Words. And again, this is maybe a bit more the kind of app that we see a lot of, where rather than interaction between students, which is what I really wanted to get in the classroom with the previous app I mentioned, this is a bit more of a kind of self-study kind of deal. It's more personalized. And I think this was the first time when we went, actually, we kind of had it with Apple and trying to make iOS stuff and keep out pace with those. And we went a bit more kind of hybrid in our design, and we made something that would work on Google Play as well as the App Store. And we went very broad with this, but it was still what's called a native mobile app. We didn't go as far as making something that worked on Windows phones at this point, but it worked on pretty much any phone. And we distributed it out to the world. This app is still available free. You know, if you want to Google, I prefer the Google Play version, to be honest, to the iOS version. And this is really, it works with the Oxford Dictionary, Oxford Learners Dictionary, and you can either put in words that you've discovered as a learner. So if I come across, the word algorithmic is quite interesting. If I see that today, if I notice it, I type it into the app, it will find the dictionary definition of that app, and it will store away that word for me. And each day I can add words that I come across. And then what the app does is it uses, I could say artificial intelligence, but it uses some computational linguistics to make different kinds of activities, that closed activities that test my knowledge of that word, using the dictionary definition, that word, other words that I've learned that are similar, that have similar meanings, same word family, as distractors, because I can make multiple choice, it can make word jumbles, it can make about 6 different types of activity, and it keeps serving them back to me, and then it uses one of these spaced repetition algorithms to remind me, and it sends me alerts and says, "Oh, David, have you thought about the word blended learning today?" And then asks me a question on it when I tick. So this was very individual though. So each student logs in and uses it on their own, and anybody can use this free as a user, but we also integrated it to our courses. So this time we said, if you're a standalone user, if you're studying B2 English, business English course, it will also feed in the key vocabulary from the unit that you should have studied this week. from our school. So it kind of works standalone. And I trialed this in schools. I had students who were studying first certificate English in our Cambridge school. I went in there and I said, well, you can put a few words in as you learn. And the next day I did focus groups with these guys, and one of them would put in 2,000 words overnight, the entire word list of first certificate, which they could get to the dictionary. So they were testing themselves. So it really did suit the way learners worked, and it was linked to our database. So it did slightly integrate to our courseware. This endured great. This is still out there now. As I say, this is still available free from the app stores and works in a variety of different ways. But what we did here now is we had a scaled down in-house team to develop this. And so this is something that we've kind of kept alive and kept going. One of the nice things about this is it had a lot of academic involvement. And we built, to keep this alive, we kind of built it, it was called Words. We then built it into a suite. So we now have words and we have sounds, for example, and a couple of others that I won't go into or I'll take far too long. But we built different things so you could focus on, for example, vocabulary and pronunciation. And there was a lot of academic input on that. It was kind of sidekick to learning, didn't distract from main learning. Final one to mention is, with all of this dependency on one platform or another platform, and the fact that that made us have to work very long term to keep pace with that, and in-house development costs so much. You know, you're going to hire even just 4 developers full time. That's that takes a lot of money from other things you want to do in running language schools, and we're very much an English language school. So here I went for something quite different. I worked with freelancers. And although, as you can see, EF Fast Track here, it integrates with the course book. It's for younger learners, short summer courses. It's another finalist in the Eltons. But this one was completely platform agnostic. So I designed this so that it would work on your phone or a tablet, or indeed a laptop if you had one, so that even the teacher could access it in the same way with an interactive whiteboard in the classroom, for example, or their laptop. We designed this to work in any space. But rather than build this kind of native app and code something in P code or whatever that would work on iOS, or code something that would work on an Android platform, we just built this in HTML5. And the disadvantage of building something that's effectively, it's a website really. The disadvantage is it's not quite so clever. It can't do quite so many native things. So it couldn't, for example, respond to a shake of the iPhone, like that first one I mentioned. But it can still send out video. It can still make sort of matching exercises that work different on different things. They look different, for example, if you're using an iPhone or if you're using a overhead whiteboard kind of thing, but they all have the same core functionality. So it depends on the device a little bit how it looks and feels, but it works on absolutely anything. And that was really handy for flexible deployment, short-term summer schools, working with kids, and using one of the things that I love about Mole is finally getting to this kind of bring your own device state, right, where we can have the kids just using their own mobiles. And I was working with kids, and it was a lot of kind of ownership of the content when it's on their own mobile. And we even built into this app the way that students could make their own things creatively. So they could make short videos on anything that was on their phone, and then post it in to the website, and then we could share it across the users of the app and build competitions and build that into the learning and stuff as well. So they weren't just consuming media, they were creating, and it was classroom based. So there was interaction kind of off screen and on screen, and we had maybe clusters of 2 or 3 students working together, one watching the instructions on their screen, one filling in the group's answers to something, and a third student showing the medium. So we had a very, very nice kind of interactive setup with this, by making it work on any kid's device in the classroom and the teacher's device too. So that was very, very powerful, and also very cheap. So I made this one. So I shouldn't say that. EF invested millions in this. No, it was very cheap, and I just found a developer on Elance, kind of free developer. We used the same people that work, the team that I was running at the time, that worked on our coursebook development to do all the design, and we made a kind of seamless transition. And we thought mobile first when we designed the course book, so there was a place for this mobile kind of media to fit in there. And so we were able to design it. It was very cheap with developers, and this thing has been its 3rd year now, and we've switched developers twice, but with no real great pain. Because of the very standard techniques that they use to build things in HTML5. So that was kind of easy and painless, and we're getting somewhere where we got students. So if I just come to my last slide, that's a summary, just a few things that I think to think about for people out there. I've tried to touch on a platform. You go on iOS, you go on Android, or in our case, we didn't even build this kind of native coded app. We went HTML5. So work on any single ones, even phones that use Windows. Connectivity, standalone networked. When you get networked, you get lots of extra problems, and you've got logins. You have to manage a database. It has to be secure. If you want to connect device to device, you start thinking of all sorts of, are you going to go Bluetooth? Are you going to use the Wi-Fi? Do you have Wi-Fi in the classroom? So there's often choices. For me, trying to deploy in classroom spaces, is it just better not to have this connected to anything else, because at least it will work? Then the code, which touches on platform really, but are you going to go native? Are you going to have one team write something for iPhones and one team write something for Androids? And you need different people to do that. Or nowadays you can use hybrids, so you can code most of it generically and then use plugin modules that allow it to work on different phones. Or I know a lot of people use generators now. I think StratApp, correct me if I'm wrong, may have used a generator where it's very easy to code pretty much by drag and drop, and you can make all the features in your app by just, let's say, the academics or the great teacher who came up with a good idea. They can build this without knowing anything about coding. The only disadvantage with that one that I see is you have to have a long-term relationship with kind of renting the engine that powers this. And then you also, recently I tried something as root, and I was knocked back by the fact that Apple shut off access to its app store for those kind of apps as well. So sometimes the generators do very restrict you to how you work, even though they're nice and quick to set up. Again, touches on this developers. Do use an in-house team, which is probably the most expensive way to go, but it's good if you've got a long-term kind of strategy on using mobiles within your institution. Freelancer is super cheap, and they're kind of, you can turn them over very fast, but you've got to know what you want to tell these guys, and they're going to code it. So you need a strong sort of ideation, strong sort of design, and to be able to feedback on that. But freelancers think work quite nicely. Or a software house. Software houses tend to ask better questions than freelancers, but the price goes right up, I think. Then this idea of UIX, whether it's the user interface or the user UX, the user experience, the user journey. Again, if you've got great people who think about teaching and learning, maybe they're good at imagining how you want the app to work through. But I'm not going to go into great detail on this for time, but this is a very important thing when you're building an app. And do you build it? A great software house can really help you get that right and understand how people are going to use this today, tomorrow, how their login connects with their learning, where are they using it, and the touch points. So you either collaborate with people who are experts in that, or you kind of hand that whole idea over and say, right, I want this thing that does X, Y, Z. How do I fit it into the student's life? And that's often a good way to go. Otherwise, some of us guys who are used to education and academic ideas and so on make an app that is horrible to use. And I've seen several out there that they're like, we got the goods on the academic idea, but it just, you compare it to anything out there that the kids or adults are getting from the app store, it's horrible to use, and you want that user experience nice. So you want to get the expertise from those experts, people who live in that world. And project timescales. I've become more and more a fan of something that doesn't have to fit at a closed time. So is agile, does develop over time and gives you options to move forward with your students and your learning, because your app doesn't kind of die like my first one did. But that means you're going to need to make sure you've got budget for a year on year, If you use this waterfall model of kind of we stop at the end of this, that works for funding, but it might just mean your great idea doesn't exist at the end of the day. So that is me. Sorry, I rambled a little bit there. Thank you very much. And I have to say hello at the end because our real full-fat learning app that I haven't talked about right now, which is a chatbot-based app, something else I'm not involved with that team, is called EF Hello, and possibly another time we'll get one of the leads from that team to come and talk to the EuroCALL group about that. Be very happy to do that. Do I ask Martin if there's any questions now from that whistle-stop tour?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much, David. I'm going to ask if there are any questions from people in the audience. Please turn on your microphones and ask, or else you can put them into the chat if you want to do it that way instead. I have a couple of questions myself I'd like to ask. Firstly, how big is the change that needs to be made each time, you know, the App Store upgrades or iOS has an upgrade? How big is the upgrade that needs to be made to your app to allow it to continue to work on these devices?
It depends how cheaply you do it, I think. When we actually built our own in-house team, and we had experts who are aware of the fact that iOS updates, and they consciously design around components that are, sorry, I'm going to sound very techy here, sort of scalable, you know, components that work forwards. Where sometimes when you get something cheaply built, you use bits of open source software and so on, you end up using non-standard components that used very customized code that don't work tomorrow. And I think it's all about having people on the team who realize that this control, I don't know, it might be something that for example, plays video in the screen. This is future-proof. This uses standard components, and it uses native components on both phones that will continue to work. You know, if you go both developers, that of course costs you more. But otherwise, the smallest change in iOS can completely destroy all of the code, because it depends on something highly customized. You know, maybe you've got a customized play bar, for example, that doesn't just say to Apple, please play a video. It says to Apple, right, I want to draw this picture, I'm going to put video in it, I want a line, and this thing drags. And if it does that bit by bit, it ain't going to work. So you need the real expensive experts to think that way. And we have been caught out a number of times in the past. Where we still get caught out is that something great comes along in a new way of networking with our network-based app, and we want to take advantage of it. We realize the technology we had before wasn't good enough. So I think that's mostly where we've had to change recently, because we've learned to avoid that by investing more.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I'll just ask if there's any questions from anyone else.
David, I've got a question for you. You mentioned that with EF Mentor Words, you were using that in the classroom with children. So the first question that I have, did the children have their own devices, and which age group of children do you find that this works best with?
Okay, I think it was Words was less in the classroom, and Fast Track was more in the classroom. Words can be used in the classroom, and I mentioned working in our schools in Cambridge and so on. So Words was more about teens using that. That's the kind of target audience, average 19 age, and this one isn't networked in any way, so it's not that there's not the e-safety concerns that might be at the heart of your question. And this is the user kind of creates their own account, and there's no details are promoted. But what happens here is really this flexibility to suit around how someone wants to learn. So we might have a student in the classroom who has a dictionary on their desk, and you know, some of the students use a translator as well in classes if they've got a mobile device, but they'll have a course book, and this just adds one more thing to their to their toolkit, if you like. And the idea was it's a sort of way of taking your homework away and continuing the learning outside the class. We like things that link between the two face-to-face classes, and that's where this worked. Did that answer the question, or was the question more directed to something like Fast Track, where I had
No, I think I remember Fast Track from a presentation you did in 2019, where that one was used for like a scavenger hunt in the class, if I recall correctly.
Yes, we could go there with that. That was again, we made this stuff very modular, and yet those scavenger hunts going beyond the classroom and so on was a key part of that. Yes.
Right. Good. And is there a particular age group of children that this works best for, or?
Fast Track was designed for kind of 13 to 16-year-olds.
Okay.
Again, another kind of feel for that question is certainly every time we design something, we are based around personas. I did a workshop, I think, back in 2013 for EuroCALL talking about user-centered design. And, you know, we personify the kind of student. It's not the same app for every student, but there's 3 or 4 different people you want to appeal to and work in different ways, but still very much give them flexibility. But clearly, for example, Fast Track here, we want to provide something that is quite safe for students. So there's some control, but also we want to give them a huge amount of creativity and input, and let them have fun and let them use their own devices. Whereas other things for more adults, you know, you rain down the fun. Maybe they don't even need their own devices, but you're using this connectivity and database access and rich media that you can get from an app. So we're looking at very different takeaways, I suppose, from the app, depending on the personality and the age group of the learner.
Okay, great. I think we'll move on. Thank you very much, David, for sharing all that with us. So I think it's time to introduce Daniel Shen from Soqqle, and I'll ask him to share his screen, and he can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel, and I'm going to start presenting my topic, and I'm going to make it full screen. There we go. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mani, for inviting me for this opportunity to share. I'm Dan. I'm from Singapore. Most of our users in this application or are working with me around Asia. So we have in Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Thailand, all over the place, including Mani. So fantastic. So today I'll be sharing a little bit more about the products that we have. So we have a mobile application. So I have 2 products actually. The second one, which I'll mention shortly in a bit as well, is actually in a metaverse. So I'll share that in a bit. So we started, we are a few years old now. But 2 years ago, we got our first pilot as a mobile application. Our app is designed to look like a TikTok, but for education. And so it's more engaging, more interesting for students. But the main goal here actually as a company, one of the things that we wanted to do is to encourage peer-to-peer learning, knowledge exchange, and especially in a language learning standpoint, you know, as students watch each other's present, can they actually inspire each other, motivate each other to learn more through the use of videos? So you can see here, the app will look a little bit more like a social media app, but more purpose built for education. So I'll share a bit more about that in a bit as well. But before that, I want to mention the main goal of me presenting today is to try to find research collaborators. So, and of course, funding. So specifically, if you are linked to or have access to research grants. So that's something that we're focusing on, especially in Asia. We have a few that we're working with and working for. And one of the topics that I'll present here actually is to present the outcomes of the research. So I'll go into that in a bit. So Soqqle is like a TikTok for education. As you can see, you can swipe up and you can like a post, you can add comments, exactly like a regular social media application. So there are videos, there are pictures, PDFs that can be uploaded as well. And we have a dashboard whereby the teachers can view all of the content together in one place. So I'll show some examples. This is actually for a sustainability presentation done by a university in Hong Kong. So it's blurred out because I'm not logged in for the purpose of privacy. So this is some examples of videos that students will present about them reducing waste, or they're actually not speaking anything. The other video that I have as an example is this one. So they present a video of themselves. There's no sound as well. Maybe I didn't allow sound. Anyway, so and then what else we do is we put all the videos together in one place like this so that the teachers can view them and get to kind of view everything together in one place. So it's easier to monitor, because on a mobile app, if you have 100 videos, it's very hard to monitor. And this is especially useful for some teachers that we have who, before that, they were doing it on YouTube, getting students to upload it onto YouTube, send a link on email, and then to give feedback, you have to give like one by one. Here, there's a way to give feedback by the teacher through the application. So it's all integrated in one place, and you can get some analytics like which students are watching whose videos for how long, which we essentially use for our research work. So yeah, so that's kind of how the application works from a mobile application standpoint. And I'm going to open it back up again. So again, the main purpose here is for, most of our users were using, again, YouTube. The whole process was very manual. LMS, learning management systems, they have size limitations. Other applications like Flipgrid, for example, don't give very good analytics. They don't really tell the teachers what the students are watching or doing. And they don't give much information that you can use for your research work. We do that, and I'll show how we do that. But essentially, any kind of video assessments can be done, singing, regular presentations, or even mathematics. So this is one example of our professor in Hong Kong, in Lingnan University. We use it for sustainability. So there were 32 students who were doing this research work with us. So the students were required to upload videos of themselves presenting how they were reducing waste. Before that, they were doing essays, really boring essays that nobody loves. And now they were just recording themselves, going to the recycling center and measuring how much they reduced their waste. So we had 32 participants, 62 waste audit videos. These are some examples. And then they also were required to add comments to each other's videos. So this is to give each other's ideas of how they can improve their waste reduction activities. And this was a qualitative comment that was given during a focus group. So they received comments. They said that they threw away the trash without removing the tape, not good for recycling. And then another one was about how they got new ideas from their classmates about the kind of classifications of waste. So this is part here for some people who really like quantitative and like statistics. So we generate information about how long students are watching videos of each other and who is watching whose. So we were able to build a correlation between the length or duration of videos watched against their final outcome. So in this case, we were measuring the students' eco-literacy, so their appreciation of the environment, and we were able to do a prediction. In this specific example, we had about a 20-30% probability of increasing their learning outcomes by 13%. But our most recent paper actually was even better. We had a 40% chance of increasing a student's learning outcome by 23% if the students watched at least 19 videos of their classmates or as a part of their assessments. So we do this kind of research work, and we're trying to find more collaborators who can kind of give, to work together to get even bigger number of observations. So we have other ongoing research. I have a language learning. This is actually Chinese language. Chinese language. Actually, sorry, this one is actually Chinese language learning between Malaysia and Prasetya Mulia University in Indonesia. I have language learning English in Education University in Hong Kong, and in Thailand I have more as well, communications and research. And then some other topics are economics, engineering, and upcoming we have a bit more on sustainability. So this is our first application. And if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll go into the second one in a bit more. But this one is our first app. It's again for homework-based homework assessments. If you want to have a different way of getting students to record themselves speaking, and you haven't had a very good way to kind of watch them one by one, and you can't do that in class either. So this is a way that you can get students to upload directly onto an application. It's more interesting, more engaging than your regular application. So if you are interested, feel free to reach out to me. Our second application here focuses on the metaverse, and I'll show. It's still on a pilot. We actually have a first run with Lingnan in 2 weeks' time, Lingnan University in Hong Kong, and current applications like Second Life is just very hard to customize and very expensive. You have to pay. You have to pay for the land. You have to get developers to build into it, and if you want to change your learning objectives, it's very hard to change, right? You have to kind of pay developers to update it more. So our app is called Classlet. It's a way to plug into an environment, in a virtual environment. And I will show you right now how it looks like in my Unity application. So let me play. So I'm looking for more professors, lecturers who's interested in such a thing. So here it's again private. So I have a demo restaurant scenario. So I have a cat here. So this represents a student. So I can run around and I can engage with objects in this environment. So here, for example, I have a robot. So I can click on a robot and I can engage with the robot to get knowledge and information. One of our activities that we are planning for language learning is for a student to be able to upload video, voice recordings. So specifically in this example, in a restaurant, I could have the student role play as either the customer or as the staff to give maybe feedback or to respond to customer complaints. So basically to practice your language. I can also watch videos like this. But there'll be different characters, like I have this person sitting down there, and then this might be someone who is not happy with her food, and then I have to respond back. I have to upload a voice recording. We are still integrating the voice recording, but for now we are focusing on sustainability. Let me stop. This takes up a lot of memory, okay, on my computer, so I'll stop playing this one. So yeah, so this is just an example of the metaverse environment. Our definition of metaverse in this case, I mean, it's currently not VR focused because not all students have a virtual reality headset. It's currently just a virtual environment. But going forward, we will build in VR, especially for some classes or some schools who might have that lab. So I didn't get to show it just now, but there will be that the teachers can actually drag and drop characters into the environment. They can change the dialogue in the environment. So it's kind of like a metaverse environment where you have authoring tools. As a teacher, you can customize it, change it without having to go back to the developer and say, hey, I want to change the wordings on this environment. So the first scenario that we have will be with sustainability again. So students can walk around the environment, talk to different objects, and then get information. For example, getting to learn about how waste are being classified based on the different types of materials. And then they can have video recordings, voice recordings, and things like that. They can also add comments to each other's posts within this environment. So they can add items as well. So you will be able to gain items on the environment. And we will have more social interactions as well. So again, the teachers can customize different tasks and objectives in the application. They can ask students to upload a video, upload a voice based on the requirements that the teacher have for their learning objectives. So right now I'm working on a sustainability learning project, and it includes having students to pitch and present ideas for sustainability, and that is a joint project with quite a few countries. So I have Malaysia, Thailand, Hong Kong, and I just got a Japan university as well, focusing on public policy. So we're all going to be presenting about ideas on public policy linked to sustainability. So this is currently our main projects that we have in Soqqle. So we have, again, the video application, and we have a metaverse environment, and we're looking for more partners, especially those who love research. So that's all I have to present today, and I don't know how long I took, but hopefully that is interesting to everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. It was very interesting. And again, I'll ask people to put forward any questions, either on the microphone or in the chat. I have a question myself about the metaverse. Again, this was similar to what Marnie asked earlier. Do you have a particular age group that you imagine this being most suited for?
Well, I have my immediate one is university. So my immediate one is university, but they are my existing users. Like, for example, if like Marnie wants to try it out, I would love to try and set up an environment that she can try out with her class. It's basically who I know, who I meet. If any one of you here wants to try it out, then it's just going to be you. But I also have a few secondary school teachers that I've met who wants to learn, who wants to do things for values education, for example, like cyberbullying. So you can create an environment whereby the students are playing the role of as if they are receiving cyberbullying. And then they can kind of go, oh, this is how a student feels like. So those are also very interesting, because having that simulated environment is something that is very hard to do in real life, right? So a virtual environment would be a good place for them to try it out.
Great, thank you very much. And I'll invite questions from anyone else. Marnie, do we have anything in the chat? Oh, there's a question there. Okay, yeah, sorry, Alicia has asked the same question actually, yeah. What is she was asking the age group for Soqqle, not the metaverse, but yeah.
There's actually one more condition there. It depends whether your school allow students to use their mobile phones. So currently we are focusing on mobile. My understanding is that for primary school, junior, they usually can't use their mobile phones in the classroom. So it depends on what your school's policies are around mobile use. So something that but for right now, I do not have. I mean, like Apple, right? Apple is annoying around the age group. So we currently do not have we're kind of like 13 plus at this moment.
Okay, but that's more just for convenience, I guess, and school policy rather than the app itself, probably. Yeah. I mean, I just know just yesterday in Ireland, this big announcement that the school has created the first mobile-free zone, as if it was this wonderful development. I was thinking, I'm not sure that's how you're going to get them to use mobiles more effectively. It's just by creating zones where they can't even appear. But it was interesting to see that was considered progress anyway. Okay, so I think if there are no more questions, I'll say again, Daniel, thank you very much for taking the time to present here. Really interesting. And if you look around at my empty office here, you can see the amount of funding that I have available, but hopefully you'll find it from somewhere. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Daniel, and we will invite our next speaker, Esther Torres, to please join us.
Hi.
Hi,
Okay,
Esther. Great to see you. And yeah, please share your screen and go ahead.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. I was very, very happy to listen to the previous speakers because I think we share a lot in common. And I wish I had heard them speaking about this before we actually went into our planning. So what I'm presenting today is this app called StratApp, the art of reading. And it was a collaboration between 6 institutions, 5 of them universities. I won't say this was one of the problems, but it is true that the approach to it was a bit different than when you approach it from a professional perspective. StratApp is actually a game which is available for iPhone and Android. You can actually download it still from both Play stores and iPhone store. And the aim of it was to boost academic reading skills using precisely this game. In these universities, these institutions had each one of them different aims. Our university, Rovira i Virgili, was in charge of the project, which was funded by an Erasmus KI 12-3 project. So we had funding there. And then UAB was in charge of all the academic reading research part. We had the University College of Social Sciences in Poland and the University of Pays de la in France to do the testing with their students. And finally, we had this collaboration with Amistad, which is a professional developer institution. They are a company in Poland. Finally, we had a consortium of Catalan universities, which was going to be in charge of disseminating the results. So we were really, really happy with this group of people because we had a clear roadmap and each one of these partners had a role in it. Okay, so we were going to be doing the research. We were going to design the core of the game. We had a great company who was going to make it work. And then we had the testing and designers were going to make it really, really attractive. Obviously, users were going to play it and they were going to love it. So it was going to be, you know, a full, incredible success. And we all agree with it, right? This is how things go when you start planning for them. I skipped some of the main ideas we had here. Sorry, this was supposed to be aimed at B1, B2 level students. There was a preliminary testing, which was sending students either to the east or the west wing, depending on their level. It was focusing on reading strategies, mostly because we wanted them to improve their academic reading skills. And so at this level, we were aware that they had the vocabulary, they had the grammar, but they just needed to be more effective in reading. So we were going to be using academic texts. And that was something we had finally designed. And we were very clear that we wanted it to be a game. So it had to be fun to a certain extent, and it had to be attractive. And therefore, when we budgeted for it, these two things were taken very much into consideration. So going back to our roadmap, the first part, as I said, was doing the research. And as researchers, obviously, we start from the theory. We did a very intensive review of what were the best techniques for improving academic reading skills. We looked at critical reading, different reading approaches, how different techniques would yield different results. We tried to focus on what aspects could actually help our students improve faster. And we mostly center finally on discourse structure, especially connectors and how they were used. And also we isolated some features that had an immediate effect on quality, which was specifically vocabulary building. So those were more or less the aspects from an academic perspective we wanted to bring into the app. And obviously, as we had said, we wanted to work with academic texts. So we had to start somewhere. We had to start with a field of knowledge. Terminology, being that vocabulary wasn't a very important aspect, meant that for academic reading, we had to choose a field. For this app, we finally decided to go for education, because most of the testing was going to be done in faculties of education. We had university students in mind to start with. And obviously we envisage further spin-offs. We want this to be a scalable open project that would then go into engineering, chemistry, or whatever was needed. And we were very, very proud of it. Actually, if you go to the main StratApp page, you can access to the different research which was done and what was published on this topic if you are interested. And then about the game. So we had the elements we wanted to have players work on. And then we kind of design. This is the result of 2-3 different afternoons working on different things. First of all, we define, the spaces, how the player would move from one place to another, how many scenarios we would have. In this case, as I said, we designed this entry. There was a test, and then the test would send the player either 1 to 1 or B2. And this was a challenge in itself. I mean, I think most of us here work with languages, and for this to happen, it had to be some sort of a short test that will give us an approximate idea of the level of a student. And we are not Cambridge or Oxford, and we could not expect them to take a test for 6 hours. So it had to be something very, very specific. I might develop later how we sort this out. And eventually they were sent to a museum style design in which they would be visiting different aspects. We also look at other game dynamics, like what score you would need to unlock new levels, whether you could use wildcards or not, whether how many lives you could use, what happens if you die, is everything erased, do you go back, do you go further? All these very, very little things were actually considered in a very initial stage. And as I said, we eventually decided it was a minimum score required to unlock new levels. Doing it in a shorter amount of time would give you extra points. There was a point scale. They could compete against other students to see who got the best points. And then we integrated social media by offering badges. So if you were advancing on levels, you could share these badges on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We even went down to the level of considering the specific screen dynamics. I'm sure you cannot read this, but it's just a definition of how the game would be played and how the app should be working for them to work in vocabulary. So for example, we design all the different games for improving vocabulary. And once we had everything, we sent it to the software developers. For those who have ever been involved in developing an app, probably you know how this went. And what was the first huge mistake we made at this point? And it was to separate those processes. We were so concerned about the educational aspect of it that although we had taken into account some of the big questions Dr. Bish proposed before, we had some technical understanding of it. And the truth is that we thought big. As I was listening to my colleagues, I noticed that they all both started with a very concrete, small idea, and then this scaled up. And this is the way to go. Okay, we are happy how StratApp ended, but it was very, very challenging to start with such a huge idea and make sure each one of the different steps was working. And I don't mean to generalize, but it is true that academics, it's not just that they will not understand the technical limitations or even the technical possibilities different platforms propose, but it's also about how they might not understand space and money constraints. I mean, anything is possible in software development. The main problem is that it costs money and it takes time. On the other hand, if the communication with software developers is not fluent, it might be the case that they will, by default, look at what the problem we are trying to sort out. They will decide what the actual problem is and propose solutions. But if they are not actually fully aware of what the real problem is, their solutions might not be addressing it. And obviously, this could have been avoided by initial brainstorming together with the software developers. And it is important maybe for the academics to say, to isolate first what is key and what is superfluous and communicate that to the developers so the design is constructed in cooperation. So by now our roadmap went back a little bit, and instead of asking software developers to make our ideas work, we went back to the main core idea, which was improving certain aspects of reading. And we worked together with the developers to see how we could move forward. And it was very good. It worked well. As we explained and decided what was important and what was not important, we would move toward proposals they would have for us. And this was something we were very happy about. This game was not originally considered in that big piece of paper I had shown before. This is about learning the different types of connectors, for example, in this case. So they have to, this angel moves around and it goes left and right as you tilt your phone. And you had to go around selecting whatever type of connectors we had set. I don't know, casual connectors or examples or whatsoever. We could actually decide and change the content of the different clouds around here. And so integrated something manual, like moving your phone and some knowledge of things. And as you can see, they had lives. This design would have not been possible without this brainstorming together with the developers. And then, of course, we wanted the designers to make it attractive and marketable, and we want to have lots of people playing it. And again, they had great ideas sometimes. We agreed on the concept in general. It was classical ideas, also because of copyright images. We thought this allowed for more possibilities, accessing a database which incorporates lots of well-known pictures. And for example, this is not really a game, in my opinion, as this is a multiple choice question. And how do you make a multiple choice question more attractive? Well, the idea was to risk bombing the Tower of Babel. And there were many ideas like this coming up, but then we had to see how users play it. And obviously they were going to love it because we all know students love to learn. We sometimes forget, however, that they love to learn in their own way. And this is something David also mentioned before. You design certain aspects having a certain users in mind, but users have their own way of doing things. So for example, we discover in the pilot testing with the students that they managed to find a way to skip the test. We are not sure yet how, but they managed to decide and move Philip from B1 or B2. Very often they would just be testing what they liked the most, and they would get bored and stop playing. And then we noticed we had to offer a higher range of answers, of possible answers, and also including wrong answers. Otherwise, they would just be testing until they got the right one. So, for example, in the right hand, they had to find a sentence. It was about understanding. They had to choose the right color. Because they had, initially, there were only 5 colors and 6 lives, which meant they would test all of them. And they were lucky enough to just move forward. So after the testing, we had to rethink the game, taking into account the students, not anybody, all of us, have short time concentration spans, that instructions had to be clearer and shorter. We had to cut down on all the text we had initially proposed. And we had to make sure this type of user design errors where people could do funny things were kept to a minimum. I want to stress this because this can only be looked at after testing. And in this case, this testing implied some redesign, and that means money. So that's something you have to have budgeted beforehand. It's not just how much it will cost to create the app, but how much it will cost for you to improve the app. And as some of my colleagues have said before, to scale it up if you decide to do so, and maintenance, how to maintain it in the long run. Still, I mean, the roadmap was a bit different. We had, as I say, go back here and then include some redesign here. But still, I mean, we eventually came up with the app, and we are very proud of it. I think it works really well to a certain extent. Again, because of this initial redesign and what we could actually do and do not, there were some excellent ideas we had in mind that had to be rethought. Obviously, our money came from a project which was approved 3 years before the actual app was created. So we had to work around this. And among, for example, one of the things we could not do with the money we had was to make it platform independent. We managed to develop the app for iPhone and for Android and connect it to a content management system that allows us to include more information and to change the text, to change the activities. But it is, for example, really hard to create clone apps for other fields of knowledge. Maybe if we have more funding in the future, we would actually do that, but not right now. So mostly the takeaways is if you plan to create an app, be clear about what problem you are trying to sort out. You might consider what are the possible solutions, but even if you think that you have the solution, explain and talk with your software developers of what the problem is. Okay, sometimes some parallel thinking might be required to approach a problem from a different perspective, and that should be okay. Start small and then grow up. Don't do it the other way around, even if you might come up eventually with a good product. And as I said, include developers and designers in the brainstorming sessions, especially if you are not very tech savvy, if you don't understand the implications, the cost and the money of some changes you are requesting. It's important to have them in the room from day one. Be aware that users have unique characteristics, and they will definitely use your app in a different way of what you intended them to use it. And that should be okay or not. You have to consider whether that will be part of your plan. And in your budgeting, also consider the cost of redesign after piloting if you haven't. I mentioned this, we actually had the budget for this, but it is true, it's one of those things you tend to forget to do. But I don't want to finish with on a bad note, because sometimes flexibility and collaboration takes you a long way. And we are very happy that this sort of flexible collaboration led to unexpected results. As I said, this is an app powered by a content management system that actually allows you to change the content. So you can use the same design for the games and everything from a different perspective. And we came across another problem that needed sorting out, which is that primary students in Kenya that come from vernacular mother tongue languages have a problem reading Swahili, which is not their mother tongue, but it is the language used at schools. And we had a master's students who was dealing with this problem. And when we mentioned the app, she said, "Oh, could I use this for Swahili?" And we had not considered that at any point in our design, but it worked. We are currently testing this as, let's say, an open project to use it for minority languages that might come across these problems. And we are actually testing this now. The Swahili app already works with different aspects, and only for specific schools, that we are now testing it in Kenya in 2 or 3 primary schools. And we thought it was a good way of using the resources for problems we had not considered. So that's it. I try to keep it short, and I'd rather answer any questions if you have any. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther, for this kind of description of the journey of building an app. And I'm really pleased to see on one of your slides that your concept design was entirely done on paper. I think that gives some optimism, makes a few people maybe feel a bit more optimistic that you can at least start with that kind of process and work from there. I just wanted to ask, along this journey you've described, what was, when you put yourself at the start of the journey and where you are now, what was the biggest surprise in terms of the difference? What turned out to be most different from what you imagined at the start?
Well, the main thing, I think, is we were always considering scalability. We wanted it to be an open project, and we had a plan for maintenance, which included the marketing team, and we had a plan for future funding. Let's say how this could be actually self-supported in the future. As David Bish mentioned at the beginning, that's something you need to consider in your budget. Like if all your information is in a server which is not yours, this is something you have to keep on paying for. And for as long as the project is going to be moving on. And if you want other people to participate on this, doing the cloning, doing the scale up also has a cost. And although we had considered all that, it didn't work as we wanted it to work. So we are at the stage now that we have this app with educational text, but it's somehow hard to adapt it as we originally planned for other fields like engineering and chemistry. It is technically possible. So we've got the code, and it's an open code now. It was created by professionals, but it requires more technical support than what we expected when we initially designed it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I will ask anyone else if they have any questions, either in the microphone, or using a microphone, or in the chat.
Can I jump in with a question? Thank you. So it's super good. I've heard about StratApp in other presentations before, but I really love the organization of the flow, and yeah, you and I were probably both going, oh yeah, I recognize that. So we feel each other's pain, I think. I wondered, possibly a useful thing to say to people, did you, when you started, did you consider what was going to be the measures of success at the end? Did you say, right, for the people who invested, or stakeholders, universities or whatever, did you kind of say, right, we want to have this many users, or we want to get this kind of learning? What were you looking for to say, yeah, we've done it, we're very happy with it?
As I said, we had big dreams, huge dreams. So initially, for us to be successful, we wanted this app to be played in all Catalan universities. Just nothing. I mean, 12 universities? And we wanted it to be a comparable measure of the level of the students. We actually consider it to be some sort of Pokemon Go. not because we were catching Pokemon around, but the fact that we envisaged competitions between universities to see who had the best level of English or who were playing most. And that was supposed to be integrated within all this point scale system. And really for us, when we started with the actual development, when we presented the project, we considered that reaching around 1,000 users was an acceptable measure, which was, we thought, not too optimistic because there are many more students in Catalan universities, but still we thought that would be a step one. And we didn't get that far. I think we ended up in 200, 300.
But you never dreamt that you would get the kind of users that you described at the end there that may be more thirsty for it. It's quite cool.
Actually not, and we are so incredibly happy about this. You know, when you are in the field of teaching and educational research, and you see that something you created actually helps someone with a real problem, and not saying that learning English is not a real problem. Obviously, it does help. But dealing with primary education students is incredibly rewarding. And seeing that something you came up with can be used for other things is also a great come up. So we are really, really, really proud of the app and how it turns out.
Okay, great. Well, I'd just like to say one more time, thanks to David and to Daniel and to Esther for the presentations. I know, just speaking for myself, you know, and probably there are other people in the meeting here today who have had the thought of, I'd love to build an app, but how do you do that? It's beyond me. It's, you know, I wouldn't even know where to start. So I think we're all quite a bit more informed now, and it's quite a bit more achievable, perhaps, than you thought, or than I thought anyway. So really, really enlightening for me, and I'm sure for other people in the room to follow these presentations today. So thank you to the three of you. And will we move on, Marnie? We'll finish off very quickly with just a little comment on the mall SIG activity.
Mm-hmm. So one thing we want to focus on is we're trying to get all of the members of the EuroCALL mall SIG. We want all of the publications on the website so that the website can be a one-stop shop, especially for graduate students that are new to the field of malls. So we're putting everything right into, so the research projects are on the website along with the publications, which we're sorting by year. So if anybody has any publications that we can add to the website, please let us know so we can have this updated. And of course, if anybody is doing research in mall, please visit the website. We have the DOI links listed for all of the different publications in there. So this is a great resource for everybody here. And so as you can see, it's sorted by date and then in alphabetical order. Okay. And Martin, if you can tell us what's next for the mall SIG.
Yeah, okay. So what's next for the mall SIG is EuroCALL itself, which is in Iceland this year in August, but also there will be a hybrid element to it. And we are holding our mall SIG symposium. We've got two speakers lined up, Dr. Linda Bradley and Dr. Mar Gutierrez Colon, and they'll be speaking on the theme of how mobile assisted language learning can help to level the language learning playing field and make it more accessible and more inclusive when it comes to maybe non-mainstream learners. And as well as the symposium, we also have EuroCALL itself, the conference. I know that I have submitted a presentation. Hopefully that will be accepted. Hopefully some other people here have as well, because we just want to see more mall-related research in EuroCALL and indeed other presentations. So we encourage people to keep working on mall-related studies.
Okay.
And I think, is that the end, Marnie? Is there anything else to add? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for anybody who's indicated that they would like to join the mall SIG, I will be sending you an email. We would like to add you to the website as well under our members, where you can have your bio and profile there as well. And we will be sending out certificates for participation in this event. So everyone will be getting a certificate from myself and Martin after we finish today.
And the video of this will soon be appearing on the EuroCALL YouTube channel, I believe, as well as the Mall SIG website. That's right,
Yes.
yeah?
So the video, yes, will be on the Mall SIG website and on the EuroCALL channel.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, of course, to our three presenters, David, Daniel, and Esther. Thanks to Marnie for doing most of the organizing work. And indeed, thank you to all of the people who attended today. For me, and I think I speak for everyone when I say it's been a really, really enlightening and informative webinar. So I'm really pleased to have taken part. Okay, so I think we can all say a joint goodbye, everyone, and thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheerio.
Thank you.